Welcome there, Saners. It's Jaden here with another early edition. We're starting a little bit early tonight. Thursday night, it is Teams Night, excuse me, brought to you by Southside Pizza, your local Moorabbin pizzerias. We've got some great guests on the show tonight. We've got a few old faces, one newbie as well. Going to discuss the teams a little bit earlier, have a bit of a chat before the teams get announced. Then we'll sit down with you guys and discuss what is happening. So make sure you do comment away. Welcome, Alana, Ollie, and Tom. Tom, first time on the show. Welcome, mate. It's always good to have some fresh people showing their faces. Always like to do this at the start when we've got some new guys on the show. Share us your thoughts so far of the year, what you found really good from a team perspective, but also what's been disappointing from your end for the Saints this year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. No, it's always good fun talking Saints footy. Yeah, it's definitely been a frustrating year. I've been to most home games, and yeah, I guess as Ross said, it was a year of exploration, whatnot, and all that sort of stuff, and all the media behind it. But obviously, as some of you would have probably agreed, and probably supporters alike, last year was a bit of an overachievement for some degree, and to kind of fall back down to earth a little bit. Probably more so than expected was a little bit frustrating. I think the most frustrating part from my end as a supporter watching games is we seem to have found our mojo back when it's almost too late. So you look at the Sydney game and you look at the Brizzy game for 3 quarters, when the game was already lost in the first quarter, or the Sydney game where we came in with basically no chance and everyone had written us off. We played pretty good footy, and it's almost like Ross had flicked a switch and the boys were back on. But every time it seems like we got a 50-50 contest, or we're looking like the favourites, all of a sudden we go back into our shells and really play defensive footy, which just doesn't work out, and the skills just really highlight kind of our deficiencies around the ground, which is, been frustrating to say the least.
No, absolutely. I think you've summarised it pretty well, to be fair. I think you've done a good job there. But look, whilst it's been a disappointing year, I think tonight might even be the start that we see over the next couple of weeks, where we start to see some youth coming through, giving an opportunity to really highlight what they can do, whether it's to retain their spot on the list or work themselves into Ross's plan for next year and beyond. Ollie, I'm going to start with you. We obviously had a disappointing loss last week against the Crows, albeit in wet weather footy. I thought we dominated the first half, but couldn't put it on the scoreboard, and then the Crows got on top. Based off last week's performances, there's a few injuries coming through. Hill should return. What are you looking for from the selections that are about to drop in about 10 minutes?
I don't want to say play the kids, but I want to see one debut. I don't mind who it is. I think it's time to reward players who have been playing well in the twos. We've seen Max Heath play some really good games as the number 1 ruck in the last few weeks. We've seen signs from Houghton and Allison, so I think it's time at least one of them gets a chance, because guys like Allison might not get another chance if they don't get one in the last few weeks of the season.
So out of those 3, and I'll jump to you, Alana, so you got Houghton, Heath, and Allison. They're probably the 3 big names that haven't played just yet, that have been really consistent in the twos. Allison is coming off a great 5-goal performance against Williamstown, in Williamstown as well, which is a really tough ask. Which of those 3 are looking to make their debut this Saturday?
For me, I'd probably go with Allison, just based off his 5-goal haul. We kicked 5 goals in total last week, so to me that's almost a no-brainer if he's capable of kicking 5 goals in a game, and he's done that I think once at least before this year, certainly within the last 8 weeks. So I think it's probably ready. He's been on our list for a couple of years now. I think he's had injuries early on, but to me, I think he's probably one he's close to saying see you later to. So I sort of think, why not just give him a crack and make him change our minds? So I just don't think we have anything to lose at this point. Our forward line's very hit and miss. And last week, I don't know that it was their fault with our inside 50s, but at the same time, you can't go kicking 5 goals. So I'd be happy to debut Allison.
Perfect. No, I do agree. I think 5 goals, albeit wet weather footy, but we just didn't play the game style that we needed to with the conditions. For you, Ollie Houghton, is he a chance? Good inside mid, can get on the outside. He plays a little bit up forward as well for Sandy. Again, I think we've got a mix of old Bobs that probably need to sort of say, see you later. And I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but Zach Jones, Riley Bonner, I think this is the perfect time, especially against the Eagles. They're going to have a depleted side. Already know McGovern. Waterman's very unlikely this week. That ruins my whole Oppo view that I addressed this week. Elliot Yeo is questionable as well, so it's a completely different makeshift. Is it now time to give Ollie Houghton and even Garcia, Chris has mentioned here, get Garcia back in? Is it time for those kids?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also a fine line to blood too many at the same time in the same mix. I mean, there's certain centre bounces where it would work, where you got Houghton, maybe a Mitch Owens and a Garcia all in at once, and you say, oh, that's a future for the next 5 to 10 years. But I think we saw it against Adelaide, especially in the second half, where we got a bit not ahead of ourselves, but you got Philippou, Steele, Henry, Hunter Clark, all those guys, bar Steele, are pretty young, and we saw how easy it was for the Crows to walk it out of our midfield. So I think probably out of the two, I'd probably prefer Garcia just because of his tackle pressure. Houghton,
yeah.
To be fair, if anything, it's probably the week to bring in Houghton, considering Yo. I don't know if it was true or not, but I heard on social media somewhere he's not actually on the flight to Melbourne. So whether or not he actually is pretty much guaranteed to miss is another story. But I think I'd like to see Garcia in there. He's been really impressive, and he does bring that immense pressure that we probably missed for a fair bit of the season. But I think furthering on what you've said, I really want to see Mitch Owen in there for an extended period of time, whether it is to go one-on-one on Harley Reid and really bring his A game. And he's been pretty down for the last couple of weeks playing that hybrid kind of half-forward role. So if you unleash him in the midfield and say, you're one-on-one with Reid, go for it, I think you're probably going to see the best of him, because we know how good he is from a ruck point of view, where he's outsized, but he follows up second to none and wins a lot of centre clearances that way. So if you can follow up on that, you can't ask much more. And I guess a pretty weak West Coast side is the week to do it, if anything.
No, I like where you're going. I like where you're going with it. Ollie, just on that point, in regards to that midfield, we're obviously going to lose Philippou. I wouldn't be surprised if that's him done for the year, to sort of put him on ice and get him and King ready to go in the off-season from day one. If you're on that table, making the decision, are we looking to bring, like I said, Ross, an older head, or do you say, look, Mitch Owens, who I think could possibly be dropped tonight, to go, this is your last chance. You get 100% time in the midfield. You can't do it, then the rest of the year's in the twos.
Well, I mean, the team just dropped, so that's one thing. But the other thing is I would prefer not to see Seb Ross in. I think at this point of the year, there's no point in playing him. I think maybe if we get another injury down the stretch and we really need him to come in and play his role, he can. But I think we're better off with a Garcia. I think he just brings more right now, and it's best that after a few good weeks playing as an inside mid that he is able to show what he's learned at the top level.
No, absolutely. And you are right. The teams have just dropped, so I'm going to bring them up quickly. Alana, I'm going to get your thoughts, first, with the ins that have come in for this week. There are 3 changes. We've got Liam Stocker in, Bradley Hill in, which was always a given, missing for personal reasons last week. And then, as you just mentioned there, Ollie, Hugo Garcia makes his return to the lineup. The outs are a little bit interesting. So Philippou, understandable, injured. Ben Patton omitted. He's been the sub the last couple of weeks. And then Ari Showmaker as well being omitted. What's your thoughts there, Alana?
Yeah, very interesting, particularly with Ari. I've actually been pretty okay with his start to his AFL career in the seniors. He was probably his quietest game last week, but definitely not alone. And I don't know, I just sort of think you might as well just give him the experience. We've got nothing to lose. If it was me, I don't want to gift games, but I feel like he was sort of still doing enough to warrant a selection. Like, I don't think that there's anyone banging the door down, especially when you've got Stocker replacing Patton as your like for like. I probably would have just persisted with Ari. I just think get games into him. I think he's going to be part of our best 22 in the future. So why not just keep getting experience into him? I don't know what we have to lose there, but maybe it's a match fitness thing, or maybe they always had a plan of giving him a taste and then sending him back. I don't know. I think we've sort of forgotten about Stocker a little bit, but he did have a good game in the VFL on the weekend. So I'm quite happy for him to come in and replace Patton. As you said, Hill's a no-brainer. Filippo, I was devastated to hear that he was injured. I mentioned throughout the week, I don't reckon I've been that devo about a player getting injured since Rui back in 2010. So I think that says a lot about Pooh. He's a big out, and someone I was really looking forward to seeing how he went the second half of the year, the last sort of 6 games. So yeah, really gutted for him, but hopefully we can just get him right for next year. And then I'm happy to have Garcia back. I think we've all been crying out for him to come back in. If it was me, I'd love to see him not be sub and actually play, and then put Jones back as the sub if it was up to me. Because I think, if you're going to bring him in, just give him in for a whole game. Yeah, I like that in. And if we aren't going to make a player debutant, then second best would to have Garcia back in the side. So I actually don't mind it. But yeah, question marks over Ari.
100%. You touched on Zach Jones there, and I think that was one name that looks to me to be a little bit in a place that he shouldn't be. And Tom, I'm going to go to you. So looking at the followers, you got Marshall, Jack Steele, and the name Zach Jones in the middle straight away. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first, straight off the bat, I'm not a huge fan of Jones in the middle. Last week he played there, and I can understand where Ross would be coming from with regards to wet footy. Jones thrives off that messy kind of contested stuff, but he almost seemed a bit lost where his best position was. It was almost like he was thrown about 3 different places at points. He was playing high, half forward, and I think he was almost playing like half back at some point, and just never really looked confident with ball in hand. And I'm pretty strong with the same regards to Bonner, where it's almost like we got to find the best position for these blokes if we're going to persist with them, because we're putting in positions where they're getting exposed big time with regards to disposal efficiency. Like you look at Bonner, for example, plays off halfback, gets destroyed every time he kicks it. Jones is identical, where he almost takes too long with the footy, gets done holding the ball, and it's in a bad positions for us. And I always under the assumption when Jones was brought into the club, it was almost for a wing position. And I guess he's been surpassed by Hill, Henry, and Wood, but Jones, he's probably not the type for us to play in that midfield. Probably I'd much rather Henry to play in that position. Every time Henry has the ball, he's super clean. I would almost say Jones either as a rotating forward, as a high, pressure forward almost, just because he's got the ability and he tries his heart out every week, but he just, doesn't have the skills to match it with the best in the midfield. And you look at West Coast midfield in Kelly and Reid, he could get torched in that regards with just 2 stronger bodies in there. I would say, if anything, probably much prefer him up forward in a pressure forward role than a centre clearance person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to go through some comments. A lot of people are liking the Garcia in, which I thought would be the case. I do think he's definitely earned his stripes back. I'm hoping he's not as a sub, as Alana mentioned. Felix agrees. I like the Garcia in. Chris has mentioned here, Garcia is going to be a Jack Steele prototype, I believe, a tackling machine with some X factor. I think he's got a better ball use by foot than what Jack Steele does, or what Jack Steele did have at the same sort of time frame. So I do agree with that. Let me have a look at some other comments. Jan sort of posed the question, can Garcia mark Reid? Ollie, can Garcia stay on Harley Reid, or would you prefer him to stay as against like a Tim Kelly type?
I'd prefer to let him loose. Not bring him down with a tag if he doesn't start as a sub, which hopefully, like, we all don't want him to start as a sub. But if he starts on the bench, then I would just let him loose, let him play. No point, I don't think, bringing him in after playing 3 or 4 games, couple of them sub-affected, and then bring him in just to tag. I don't think that's worth playing him for. Just let him go, let him run, let him tackle, let him accumulate the ball as much as he possibly can.
No, absolutely. And he's good forward of center as well. Like, he's not just a midfielder that'll just stay between the arcs. Like, he does love to push up forward. I think he's kicked a goal or two for Sandy every now and then as well. So he doesn't mind hitting the scoreboard. Alana, going back to you, looking at that list, and obviously things can change between now and Saturday, but Liam Stocker goes to the half-back line. Jack Sinclair had a really slow start to the year, playing off the half-back line. Seems to have found his groove over the last probably month or so, where he's playing some really, really strong footy back to his All-Australian form. Put him back into the middle of the ground. Is it the right call, or is it sort of just as a, at the moment, but on Saturday it'll come to him being on the half-back line?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I reckon maybe a month ago I was advocating for him to stay in the back line, but now I actually don't mind what he brings to our midfield. I still see it as our weakness, and he's one of our better players, so I'm all for keeping him where we need him, I guess. And I feel like while our midfield is so sort of not our strongest suit, I think it's important to get our better players running through there. Yes, he's an All-Australian off halfback, but I don't know that we have the luxury of just having him off halfback. I think we kind of need him to plug a hole for us in the middle, and I think he does a good enough job at it. Not saying he can't do both throughout the game, but I think in the past he's predominantly just been off halfback. But yeah, I'm more happy to see him get more midfield time.
No, absolutely. Love the conversations. For those that are watching at home, I'll share your thoughts as well for those three ins. As we mentioned, Phillippo, Ben Patton, and Ari Schoenmaker have been omitted, apart from Phillippo, who was injured. And the inclusions are Bradley Hill, Hugo Garcia, and Liam Stocker as well. Tom, go to you now. Brad Hill obviously missed last week for his personal reasons. The rumor was that his partner was having a baby. So he obviously returns this week, back for his 250th game. How important has he been since joining the club? I know he came under a lot of scrutiny, but I think for the last even 18 months as such, he's really held his own and really been a leader of the club.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think people underestimate his off-field presence as well for a lot of the Indigenous boys coming into the side, like as a mentor as well. He was close to best and fairest at Hawthorn, Freo. He's a very good player. And, you look at St Kilda's fan base and things like that, and especially at games, he gets heavily scrutinised for the kind of kick stuff-ups he makes. And, I guess the frustrating thing is a supporter supporting Hill himself, like, other players who do exactly the same thing, and he just gets scrutinised tenfold with kind of the presence he brings to the club, big money and things like that, and supporters saying, we could have got X, Y, Z instead of him. But I think the most important thing is what he struggled with in the Ratton era and prior. He was playing off halfback. I think he put on a lot of size as well to kind of play that role and get hit, behind the ball and things like that to distribute the ball outside 50. But now he got Naz and things like that outside, moving the ball outside. He's flourished in that role, and he's probably learnt a fair bit defensively as well, and being able to fall back and with Wood as well. It provides a lot of cover as well. And we look at his 1% as he does, like the amount of times on the wing at Marvel where he's just outstretched himself, gut run about 100 metres to smother a ball is really important. And I think he is so important structurally. Like every time he's got the ball, same as Henry, they look so dangerous kicking inside 50. And he's, super important, I think, for us and kind of maturing, kind of grooming the likes of, Henry on that wing spot and Ronnie Burns as well, and kind of teaching that wing craft, because as we all know, at his prime at Freo and Hawthorn, he was one of the best at doing so, and he can run all day. I think that's the biggest thing that we lacked in those wing positions, and Ross has a history of, turning those players with scrutiny on their shoulders to make him a really key part, structurally speaking, and I think he provides that on a wing, and Wood does obviously very similar on the other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think he's been, as you said, probably scrutinised a little bit more because of the price tag that he came with, but I think he's been an absolute servant, and he's just announced he's re-signed for a further 3 years as well, which is super exciting. It means he'll retire in the red, white, and black. Ollie, we've sort of touched on what we think is really good from the team perspective. I think for the last couple of weeks, we've been really disappointed this week, I think we're content, if that's a fair way to put it. But looking at those 3 ins, what are you disappointed with, from that team that, will take on the West Coast on Saturday?
I think I would share this view, same as most people, that we're a bit confused why Ari was dropped. Unless there was something else, unless maybe they want to send him back to the 2s to get him some more touches of the ball. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm really confused as to why you would bring in Stocker and then drop Ari Schoenmaker, who's arguably been better than Riley Bonner in the last 3 weeks. Bonner being
I wouldn't
off
say arguably. I'd say definitely.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like Bonner made, 2 or 3 goal-causing mistakes last week that were quite noticeable. And there's been a lot of Bonner bashing going on, but you can't excuse that sort of form. So unless there's something we don't know about that's going on, I'm baffled. I'm genuinely baffled as to why he keeps his spot in the team and Ari doesn't. And they've got McLennan as an emergency who also plays a similar halfback role. So they've got 2 halfbacks as emergencies and they're keeping Bonner in the team. So I don't get that.
Yeah, look, it's fair to sort of go through that, and it's not to critique Bonner as a person or target him, but you're right. The last couple of weeks, form-wise, there were some really costly mistakes that he made on Saturday, and it's okay to make those mistakes. And I think Hill's probably the perfect example where he'll make a mistake, but he'll put that aside and then focus on the next one. Where I think Bonner at the moment maybe reads the comments, maybe reads the media, but as soon as he sort of makes a mistake, his head just drops, and that's a sign of not only a little bit of weakness, but that's a sign of what you're going to do next as well. And I think maybe giving him a run in the 2s is not a bad idea. Going forward, just to get him some form, and we've seen how benefit it can be with Mateus. He came back and he was firing. I thought he played really well last week as well, although the numbers were a little bit lower, but still quite good in those conditions. So there's nothing wrong with being dropped. I sort of wish they would do it with Mitch. I think Machedo's probably in that sort of same bracket at the moment where he needs to go back into the 2s and just find that form. And as you mentioned, you got 2 halfbacks and a ruckman / second option forward as an emergency when it's not really like it's a bit baffling, 100%. Going through last time out against the Eagles, Alana, we obviously had a bad first half. Harley Reid took us to the cleaners and had an absolute dominant 45, 50 minutes. Then we put the tag on him with Windhager. How do you see that match up against our midfield with Harley Reid going again this Saturday?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a concern without Windhanger to sort of back up what he did last time, and I do think Reid's going to come out with a bit of a point to prove, and I think he's going to want to come out firing. So I was sort of thinking, maybe along the lines of if you could perhaps put someone like a Zach Jones on him and give him a role, and there's no question about Jones's toughness and hardness at the ball, and I reckon he could really get under Reid's skin a little bit like what Windy did. Can he match it? Like, I don't know. I think it could be worth doing that if he doesn't play that sub rule. Just even if it's just to give him sort of a crack at it, because why not? Like, I sort of agree with you. You don't want to put Garcia and tag him and take him out of his game, but I just don't see the harm in putting someone like a Zach Jones as a run with, because I don't think Harley Reid enjoys the tag. No one does, but I wouldn't mind seeing Zach get under his skin a bit. I think he's in danger of giving away a few free kicks, but I don't know, it might be worth it.
No, I think it gives him a bit more accountability as well, rather than just floating in the middle and hoping for the best, to sort of see what he can do. Looking at their defense has always been quite good, West Coast, albeit I know the last couple of years, but in terms of individuals, they've always had McGovern, Barris, Cole, Duggan. They've lost a couple of them. How do you see our forward line going against them, Tom, this weekend?
Yeah, McGovern out is definitely helps. He plays that intercept role to a T, and I could see if he was in that side fully fit, he could cause a few problems against us, considering we don't have a king to take out a key defender. Obviously Barras is their main man down there, and Harry Edwards is pretty weak. I suggest as a centre half back, like he's all right, but he's nothing like McGovern. I think the main play or the linchpin, I think, is Membry. If he fires, I think we fire as a side. He's been down on confidence, down on form the last couple of weeks, and or fair chunk of the season for that matter. And we at his best, he's kind of that high half forward, really leads up for the footy, and he's the one that sends it into King, and it's really structured that way. And I think if what I'm hoping is Membry lines up on Edwards and Sharman takes out Barras. And Sharman has done roles in the past where he plays that defensive forward, and he does it quite well. Just because he's very mobile and can lead the key defenders out of their kind of natural comfort zone one-on-one outside the goal square where King likes to kind of hang out there. But if Membry can kind of really teach Edwards a lesson and kick his 3 to 4 goals playing that centre-half forward role, then I think we're in a fair chance to cause some issues. I think the big plus is that because McGovern's not there, they don't really have a third tall, which they have done in the past, and Tom Cole probably plays that third intercept role. And that's probably where Owens can do some damage as a half forward with that. He's shown at his best, he takes a third forward position and causes that mismatch, which is the real positive. Hence why I kind of would like to have seen kind of a Max Heath debut or someone like that, because we all know when Royal Marshall goes forward, he causes problems. And this would have been a week where he could have really caused issues in that West Coast backline because of no McGovern. But I think if we play our cards right and play the matchups right, I think if this is a week to get confidence back in the players like Membry, like your Owens, this is hopefully the week to do it. And especially this is our first kind of one game back at Marvel. Then we've got every other game back at Marvel. Can hopefully start something and kickstart confidence-wise going into 2025 as well, not just this season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the benefit now with that loss against the Crows is we're probably too far away to go, not to go above the Crows, but above anyone else. So at worst, we're going to finish the year with, a pick 4, a pick 5, possibly even a pick 5 and a 6 afterwards with that, depending on Josh Battle's decision. But I think you're right. Like, it's definitely the time to be able to go through that. I think the last couple of weeks, Cooper Sharman's leading's been absolutely fantastic. I think he's probably the one at the moment that can complement Max King once he does return. So trying to get him a bit more exposure in those leading patterns and getting him the ball is going to be absolutely key. Jan reckons Harley Reid will be licking his lips. I think Ollie may have touched on it before. It might have been one of the other guys that after last time out against us, that's when he got suspended. He had a stellar first half, so I think he'll be itching to get back up against us and really show us that he can do it for a full game. Jack sort of mentioned Bonner to be the sub. I don't mind it. I think it beats what Ben Patton was doing because Ben Patton's not an impact player, but Bonner can come on for a quarter and a half and can be quite dangerous going forward of centre. Chris, I think Cooper can be dangerous, do a role on Barras like he did against Geelong last year. I think so too, but with the way Membry's playing, I do think Sharman's probably the focal point that needs to be as we go forward. Ollie, looking at our team, you see Stocker's come in. Last time out, Liam Ryan and Jamie Cripps probably had the better of our small defenders. Do you see that being a reason as why the Stocker inclusion this week?
I'm not 100% sure whether he played last time or whether it was after he got injured, but I have faith in our small defenders. I think Webster's been a good shutdown defender for a good period of time. And Liam Stocker's done a decent job, mainly last year. And on any given day, they can shut down 2 good small forwards. So guys like Ryan and Cripps, who are getting a little bit older, they're kind of in and out of form. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they just don't have an impact. So I think that Stocker and Webster especially, being our 2 sort of more lockdown sort of types, can have a big impact off halfback if they can, keep the combined to like 1 goal, maybe 2 goals, something like that. Make the other forwards really present. Like they've got Hutchinson and Marek, who are both mid-season picks in the last 2 years, both really young, sort of untried types. Jack Williams is really young. So if we can force the young West Coast forwards to stand up, then I think that's probably the ideal position for us. And that would only happen if those two have big games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. Looking at our team, Alana, we're going to start with you, going through a quick fire round. What's the biggest opportunity that you can see that we can maximize on Saturday against the Eagles?
Yeah, look, I think on paper with a couple of their outs, it is just a really good opportunity for us to get back to playing our Saints footy that I thought we started so well last week, and then it just tapered off, and whether that was the weather or whatever. But I was really looking forward to sort of continuing the form from Sydney, and it just disappeared. So I'd like our midfield to get back to where we were at against Sydney. I thought they were quite competitive and our clearance work was improving. And one thing I will say is that Clark continues to get better every week, and he really impressed me in the wet last week. His skills sort of stood out when no one else was clean. Same with Burns. I've been really impressed with his footy when his last 2 weeks back in the side. He was one that I've sort of not been the hugest fan of, but really, really impressed with how he's gone about his footy the last 2 weeks. So I think it's a good opportunity for him and Clark to sort of keep building on that, because I think it's guys like that who are going to be the difference, where if they can sort of play their best footy, then we should be the better team on the day. So really looking forward to seeing what they can bring and getting us over the line.
Absolutely. Tom, what about you? You look at that West Coast team, look at our team. What's the area that you can say, look, that's a massive advantage that we can take heading into Saturday?
Probably just off the bat, it's close to our strongest defensive line we've had, and I think Stocker's a big reason for that. He just provides that real grunt in that D50. I think one thing that I would like to see us capitalise is the halfback kind of run, and really that slingshot footy that worked very well in patches last year, and kind of what we proud ourselves on last season, where guys like Naz, Sinclair really kick-started our scores forward of centre. And I think that's a big reason why we struggled to score in early parts of this season, is just the, guys like Naz, guys like Sinks were consistently under pressure and just weren't able to deliver a clean ball inside 50. So I think if we get that part of it right, and kind of level up in the mids, I think that's a really big indicator of how we're going to score on the weekend and how we're going to look moving forward. I think the biggest thing is just get the ball in the hands of Naz, get the ball in the hands of Sinclair, and let them do the work. And really try and dominate that way, rather than kind of real frustrating footy that we played last week, where we got caught out in a boundary line and, most frustratingly kicked it out of bounds in the full most of the time in pretty trying conditions. But play it down the corridor, play it simple, and get the ball in the hands of Naz and Sinks and let them do the work. And that's, I guess, where the scoring will come from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't believe last week the amount of insufficient intent to keep the ball in when it was absolutely pouring with rain and it was just sliding everywhere. There was like 5 in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. And I was just like, what is going on? I mean, at least they were consistent. That's one thing I'll give them. Go through some comments just before I jump to you, Ollie. Jack's made some comments. Allison robbed on a debut after his 5-goal hole. Absolutely agree. I think we're all in the same boat there, that he probably should have come back in. I'm not sure what's happening with Membry in terms of contract. He's still unsigned for next year going forward. I've heard a few murmurings that he may be looking elsewhere for a bit more success, which is fine. Like, I get it. But if that's the case, there's no point wasting an opportunity now for him to be playing for the next 4 or 5 weeks. It's time to get those younger guys in who are going to be part of the future. Sorry, I've just brought that one up. And that sort of reiterates what Jack said here. Memory's been great for us over the years, but I agree, rather see Max Heath in. Jan's commented following that, Heath in would be great. Row forward at times to challenge their defense. Memory is struggling. Absolutely. I think Rowe going forward has been absolutely key. He's done it a couple of times the last couple of weeks and kicked 3 goals, 2 goals at a time. And I think that's such a key weapon to be able to use. So the fact that we haven't utilised that, especially against a depleted West Coast backline, is a little bit of a question mark. And then just with Memory and Ross are going to North. Look, if they want him, they can take him. 100% go for it. Ollie, where do you see Saturday's game going? Where's the biggest opportunity for us on the Saturday at Marvel?
I would echo what Tom said with our defense. It's like that sort of line, other than maybe Sinclair playing off halfback, is pretty much our defense from last season, which was, I think it ended up being the second best. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember whether we got overtaken at the end for least points conceded, but that was so strong. And I think if we can get Naz and Stocker to connect really well with Mason Wood, Bradley Hill, Ryan Burns, and Liam Henry through the midfield, like we saw against Sydney, then I think West Coast will have no chance stopping us in attack. That sort of kick from halfback into the middle and then get the lead, get the guys leading up, like Sharman leading up into the forward 50. That was, Sydney couldn't stop us, and they're the best team in the league, arguably. So I think if we can get the halfback to half forward connection going, then we'll be in great shape.
It looked like we had that at the start of Saturday night as well, even though it was still a bit damp. But, Sharman's leading was really good. Rowe had a few opportunities that you could see visibly that he wasn't too impressed by himself, missing some, crucial goals. And I've always mentioned scoreboard pressure is absolutely the biggest thing in football. If you can take your opportunities, even if it's for 5-6 minutes at a time, kick 2 or 3 goals, then it already puts, the opposition on the back foot. Going there. I don't like talking too much about off seasons, but I'm going to bring it up because there's been a few comments here from Hughes Jeffrey re-upload. Do you think we should go after Dylan Shield? A quick yes or no from you three. Alana, you can start with that one.
Oh, if it's quick, I'll just say no.
No. Tommy?
Nah, wrong idea if they're going down that way, unfortunately.
And Ollie?
Nah, he's turning 32. We just don't need him at that age. There's just no point.
I was going to say, if it was 3 years ago, yeah, why not? But if we're going to go for someone like that, I'd rather chase a Luke Parker who's still got a couple of years of good football left in him rather than a Dylan Shield who's he's going to come, he's going to be another Dan Hanbury on less money and just get injured the whole time, and we're going to be in the media for all the wrong reasons. Comment here from Adrian just before we go through under the microscope. Should we be happy with where our team is shaping up? Is the premiership window open? Now, there's sort of 2 questions in that, but Alana, we'll start with you. As a fan, looking through what we've sort of put out over the last 18 months, are you happy with where our list is at? Are you happy where our list is heading? And do you see that there's another good opportunity like there was in the early 2000s for a premiership tilt?
Oh, yeah, look, if I was going to compare, yeah, that's hard because, if you're going to compare against our 2003 team that was coming in, boy, did we have some good kids coming through. I mean, we had Roo, Cozzy, Dal, Ball, Matty Maguire. That's just off the top of my head. Plus, you had your Lenny Hayes and Robert Harvey still running around, not to mention Fraser Garrick and Aaron Hamill. I could go on all day. So if you're going to compare it to that, I'd say we are nowhere near it, unfortunately. Yep. But I do really like our backline, and I do say this, that premiership teams are built off a solid backline. That's where I'll be gutted if we do lose a Josh Battle, because I think he is pretty crucial to that. However, I do like what we're seeing with Ari, and I also have been a little bit surprised with Caminiti down back there, so perhaps that's a future replacement there. Definitely still a lot of holes to plug, but, we are going to get another top 5 pick this year that's going to go a long way to helping us. So do I like where we're at? No, I hate being 14th. I hate being in this continuous rebuild. I want to be playing finals consistently. I want to be the Geelong of the world. Very envious of them. But I do think the club is trying to set us up as best as it can. Like I do like Bassett. I think it's good having someone who's so passionate and cares so much about the club itself. I do think that's genuine. We've tried to do everything we can off the field. You know, we've replaced all our coaches, tried to get that real St Kilda feel back, and I think they're trying. It's not like they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs doing nothing. We have recruited really well the last couple of seasons, so I do really like where we're going. I'm just so impatient, and I just want to see us get there. Which is why I'm just so shattered about like Pooh getting injured, because it's just, you know, he's the sort of player that's going to take us there, and we just need games into these guys like as quick as possible, which is again why I don't like Ari being dropped, and we might as well keep playing Garcia and that kind of things. Are happy for him to be back, but yeah, that's sort of in a nutshell where I sit with it.
No, I like what you're thinking, and you know, you summarized it pretty well. Defense. Like I play basketball, defense wins championships. Much like AFL, defense wins premierships. And it's a known fact. I think Lee Montagna came out and said, because he was talking about Carlton, where the last 25 premiers have all been top 6 for defensive ratings. So that just shows no matter how good you are offensively, if you're not good defensively, you're not going to be there when it comes time to crunch. Tom, going to go to you now. Are you happy with where we're heading? I know at the moment we're probably in a down patch, and as you said at the start, we probably exceeded expectations a little bit last year. But you fast forward mentally for the next 18 months to 2 years. Do you see us making a little bit of a charge?
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope so with the list we've got. I just saw something pop up on my Facebook this week on players under 24. There's Stocker, King, Sharman, Burns, Henry, Allison, Heath, Naz, Windy, Owens, Caminiti, Keeler, Vanez, Houghton, Philippou, Schoenmaker, Collard, Garcia, Wilson, Hasty. That's 3/4 of our best 22 under the age of 24. So, yeah, the talent's there. I think if I was going to be harsh, I'd say I would hope we're top 5 in the under 24 category with regards to the list we have. I think the one glaringly obvious omission is a star midfielder. I mean, Steele is great and I love him, and what he's just not it when it comes to midfield bull that can rip open a game with his own boot. And I think we're really desperate for that. And I think if we can get that within the next 2 years, then I would say a premiership window is coming, because you look at that under 24 group, as long as we can keep them happy and keep them together. And as much as I don't really like Hawthorn, that Hawthorn-esque kind of game style they're playing with regards to that flair and that enthusiasm those kids have, if we can kind of replicate that to some degree where the boys are playing with freedom and things like that, and then we add on top a real midfield winning player like a Brayshaw, whatever we've been linked to LDU, I think we'd be dangerous. And I think that's the one thing that we seriously need to look at this season, whether it's through the draft. I know there's Jagger Smith or whatever his name is, that kid who just racks up disposal for fun and looks a lot like Zach Butters, or grab someone from free agency, which is what I'm hoping they will do at some point, whether it is somehow grab LDU with all costs. But I think that's where the money has to go in the next 2 years, is really get a midfield winner. And hopefully if we get that, then I'd say, I'd want to be brutal and say a premiership window has to be close to be opening up and really challenging for a top kind of 6 to 4 finish.
Absolutely. You touched on Jagger Smith there, and there's probably a lot of people that aren't sort of too familiar with the NAB League and the under-18 competition. He was named All-Australian captain for Vic Metro, if I'm not mistaken, or Vic Country, but he's an absolute ball magnet. He's got the X-Factor ability. He's got the burst out of the pack, uses the ball really well, calm head. Partner him with Philippou, Owens, Clark, Jack Steele for a bit. It's starting to look like a midfield that can actually be something that's quite decent and quite destructive on an offensive sort of motion. Gus has mentioned the only way we're getting quality mids is in the draft. The gun free agents don't tend to come here. I do tend to sort of agree. And the reason for that is because our performances haven't sort of stacked up in relation to that. But Ollie, how do you see our list? How do you see the possibility of having 2, top 5, top 6 picks? Do we target midfielders? Do we target a forward? And when's our premiership window opening?
I think I've seen recently, like, it's Fox Footy, so take it with a grain of salt or however you will. But I think our defense, they rank almost in the premiership window, and it's our offense that's letting us down. So I think even if we lose Josh Battle, I think our defense is still solid. We've got guys who can fill those roles. Like we've been trialing Caminiti down there. He's been all right actually, but obviously we don't want to lose Battle, but our defense is still in a good spot. So if we can get our offense working, and I think a lot of that has to do with our under 25 guys, like you were just talking about, like once those guys sort of develop together and create the chemistry, then their link up will be so much better than it is now. It looks a little bit like, I can't think of the word, but like it's not smooth all the time. Sometimes it's really good, but other times it just kind of goes in and out and you don't really know what's going to happen. And it ends up just being a bomb down the line. So yeah, our premiership window, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 years away, only because of the development of the guys that we've currently got in the team. And if we can't get our hands on a LD or Brayshaw, like everyone's talking about, drafting someone and giving them a couple of years to at least, I don't want to compare anyone to Nick Dacos, but have a sort of impact where they can start off halfback or something and then move into the midfield after a couple of years and still have a big impact. I think the other name that I've heard, I think if I'm getting it right, Josh Smiley. Yeah. I've got a mate who plays for Rangers, and he said, like, I was just talking to him about St Kilda and that sort of thing, and he said that he would be perfect. He's inside midfielder. He'll break a pack. So if we can get Jagger Smith or Josh Smiley, I think those are the two we'd be looking at. If they're still on the board when our pick comes up, then our midfield will be better if Steele and Sinclair and those guys are still, healthy and playing good football once the rest of our team develops. So I'd give it 2 or 3 years. That we might still play finals, not go as far, but 2 or 3 years, and then we'll be in for a real tilt, I think.
No, absolutely. And we will do a little bit of a broadcast after the season, focusing on the draft a little bit, because it is going to be quite an important draft. If Battle does end up leaving, it's going to, as I said, 2 top 6 picks. There's going to be some really good, discussions around who we take, why we take them. So we'll definitely be having a discussion after the season regarding that. For those that are at home, share your thoughts on where you think our list is. Always love hearing you guys, project your opinions and sort of, dissect where we're at. So how far away we are from the premiership window, at least, and where you see our list heading in the next couple of years, extremely important. From there, obviously, the team looks pretty. I think it looks probably one of the better teams we put out for the last couple of weeks. But we always do go through under the microscope who's a little bit under pressure, under the watchful eye of supporters and the selection team. Alana, we'll start with you. Who's under the microscope this week for you?
Oh, I'm finding this hard because I feel like it's always the same couple of players who get the mention week in, week out. Like I sort of don't want to keep saying Owens and Wilson because, they seem to be the ones that always get brought up. So I kind of wanted to go down a different take and sort of when I touched on earlier with Burns, and it's not like anything bad that he's under the microscope. It's almost like a positive spin about it because, normally I'd say it's because he hasn't solidified his spot and, but I'm saying I've liked what you've brought. Now let's take it to the next level. And if you're in our top 4 like best players, that's sort of what I want to see from you. Like I've been quite impressed with his his running capacity, his disposal's been quite good. His contested footy I found has been pretty impressive. So if he can keep bringing that and just continuing to build on that and be like in our best, I'd really like to see him do that. I think his time is now. He's probably on the cusp of is he a player we keep or delist? I want him to say, I'm not going anywhere. I've solidified my spot and this is why. So I'm really keen to see how he goes about his footy this week. I think it's a great opportunity against the Eagles for him to just come out firing, especially with Filippo out. It's his chance to be like, now I'll step up,
100%. It was sort of like what I touched on a couple of weeks ago after the Sydney game where Filippo had a really good game, and we sort of thought this is the start, and then obviously continued that a little bit last week. But Ryan Burns had a good game against Sydney as well, backed up a little bit against the Crows, and you're sort of like, okay, that's the benchmark now. That's where you need to maintain, sit your spot, and continue that form going forward. Ollie, for you this week, who's under the microscope and why?
I'm not going a player. I feel like I do this a lot. But last time we played West Coast, we changed our game plan in the second half, where in the first half we were our ball use inside 50 wasn't great, and their intercept defenders were getting a lot of it. Now, obviously, McGovern's not playing, so that adds a little bit of a different element. But so I'm going to say our mid/half forwards are under the microscope. So if we can get really good connection between our mids and, say, Cooper Sharman and Tim Membry, for example, who would be the two that would be most likely to have the target on their heads for the ball. If we can get the connection really, really good in the first couple of first 10 minutes, first 15 minutes, and really get a few goals on the Eagles and demoralize them a bit, I think we can run away with the game. Tom Barras having to play more of a lockdown role rather than intercept might impact that a little bit. But ultimately, if our connection's good, even if we can hit Jack Higgins on the chest, because we seem to target him a lot inside 50, whether that's the right option or not, I don't know. But if the connection's good, then I think we'll get a lot of set shot attempts, kick a lot of goals, win the game.
100%. Absolutely. I like the way you're thinking. I'm going to go through some comments before I get your opinion, Tom. Chris, Owens needs a big week, and that's it. Look, that's absolutely fair. Jan Butler I thought he did okay defensively last week. He finished with 10 tackles, but offensively he does need to hit the scoreboard, especially when we're only kicking 5 goals a game. So definitely big for him. Salty Samurai, with the way we deliver the ball into the forwards, how we can be critical on players like Owens. I get it, but at the same time, everyone's critical on King for the same thing. So if we're going to be a little bit critical, we're going to be critical of everyone. But the ball use again, and that's why we played one against Sydney. Our ball use was so much better. We lowered the eyes, hit targets, hit leading forwards, and even we did that against the Crows for the first half with Cooper Sharman. So we start playing a little bit more, centralized, but lowering the eyes a bit, then it's going to be much more beneficial to hit the scoreboard. Jack Higgins is channeling his inner Milne power, small forward, absolutely. When he's kicking straight, he definitely is at top of his game. Tom, who's under the microscope for you this week?
I think I agree with Jan, and I'm not exactly sure what she was trying to get out of Butler, but yeah, I think he's a barometer in our forward half. That he's downhill skill is probably the harsh term for it, where when we're playing well, he's up and about, he gets some cheap goals, he gets his 2 or 3, and he looks good. I've been critical of him in that forward pocket role. I don't think he suits it as well as he does as his high half forward pushing into the midfield role. His pressure's immense. The crowd go nuts when he has a rundown tackle, when he's sprinting outside 50 into the guts and guns down a bloke, in field. And it's almost like when he plays in that forward pocket role, he almost has this massive pressure on himself to just score goals. And, he probably forgets that his game is built around pressure. And we've got Higgins that can easily kick 4 or 5 as a small forward. And he's a good kind of Batman Robin kind of style player, where he's the one that provides that immense pressure. Just looking at the team sheets, I mean, maybe this is reading too much into the actual team sheets itself, but Ronnie Burns playing off half or named half forward and Butler off the bench. Whether that means Burns is rotating with Hill and Wood as a resting wing, and then Butler's rotating as a small forward is kind of yet to be seen. But I think he really needs to kind of, whether it's for himself or for confidence in the team itself, rubber stamp his credentials as a small forward and really kind of solidify himself as a pressure forward in combination with Higgins, because I think moving forward, Butler's one of those players that a Ronnie Burns or a kid from the draft or a Riley Garcia can really kind of overtake him in that small forward role. So I think, if anything, Butler's in for a big game if he wants to kind of see himself as a center for the years to come.
Absolutely summed up really, really well. I like the reference Batman and Robin, because those two, they don't have to score 6 goals each. They probably have to do 5 goals between them. They do that. Membry and Sharman work as a partnership. They kick, 4 or 5 between them. That's, 2-3 goals each. That's already 10 goals. You're going to get a couple from the midfield as well. So already you started looking at 12, 13, 14, 15 goals. And I think with us, once you score 80 points, then the game's pretty much done. I always use that as a bit of a barometer. If we can keep them under 80, then we're in with a chance no matter what. For me personally, I think I'm going to sort of go with everyone else, and Mitch Owens is definitely the one. Kane Corns came out on the weekend and suggested that he's the future captain of the club. I don't know if I'd go that far. He's still only 20 years of age, so I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid, but he definitely does look a little bit lacking for confidence, struggling with his own form, and really you can see what he's trying to do and how he's trying to impact the game, but it's just obviously not working at the moment. So I'd love to just see him get back to basics, get back to his just, bash and crash, get him into the midfield, put a don't argue, get some, big hits and really create some turnover through the middle, and then get on the end of a cheap couple of goals down the forward, and start to get his form back into, where we know he can play, and how well he can play, and then heading into the next season as well. So massive game for all those players. I like where we've gone with it, a little bit of positive, a little bit of constructive criticism as such. Lastly, let's wrap up. Who's winning this weekend? I think everyone's going to be a bit biased, but how much spy and what do we think is going to happen Saturday? Alana, I'll start with you.
Yeah, look, at first I was thinking it was a bit of a danger game and I was a bit actually worried about it, but I don't know. Now seeing the teams and discussing them, I'm feeling a little bit more confident now. So I'm just going to go with a nice, comfortable 4-goal win. I think I'd like to see Wood have another day out against the Eagles. He was crucial to us last time we played in that second half. So I think he can sort of swing forward and really stretch their defence as well. So, yeah, I'm looking for a nice 4-goal win.
Absolutely. I think Nathan Wood's been completely underrated since he came back from that injury as well. Always under the radar. Tommy, who's winning this weekend and by how much?
I think if Yo was there, I'd say by a lot less and potentially an upset. I think he's a barometer for the Eagles. But I think, as we've already touched upon earlier, I really do think it's one of our stronger teams we've put out on the park since last year. I would hope to say that this is the week where we put 2 and 2 together and really dominate them from first quarter to last and win by, 30 plus. But what I do hope is, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Jack Higgins show. He's a really confident player under the roof. And I always say when he kicks 1 goal outside 50 within the first 10 minutes, he's on for about 5. So, hopefully he puts on a show and, Saints by 30 plus, I'm hoping.
So am I, because I'd love to have a stress-free weekend, to be perfectly honest. Just before I jump to you, Ollie, Chris, Saints 92, Eagles 67. I'd be a bit concerned if the Eagles score that much, if I'm completely honest. But I like the margin. NAGA, St Kilda 105, West Coast 79. And Jan likes our comments on Mason Wood. Good points. Wood is terrific. Ollie, we'll finish up with you. Who's winning this weekend?
I'm from the Eagles outs, Yo, Duggan, Waterman especially. Those are 3 really important players. Like Liam Duggan's their co-captain, for example. So Waterman's their leading goal scorer. I've got a lot more confidence now seeing those guys aren't playing. I think we'll get up by 6 goals. I think it'll be a complete performance. Well, that might be ambitious, but I think the defense will hold up and something's going to click in the forward line this week, hopefully against a bit of a depleted back line. So Saints by 6 goals. Look,
I called you out a couple of weeks ago and then you messaged me straight away and be like, don't call me out again. So I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe in you. But as you mentioned, Yo out, Duggan out, Waterman out, McGovern out. Like they're 4 of their probably top 6 or 7 players. The only concern I have is Oscar Allen, who's still sort of coming back from injury. So look for Dukes to go to him and have an impact. Tuxter's suggested Saints by under 20. Please don't. It's too much. I just want a game that we can just have a good chill, 3/4 time. We can be comfortable, have a few bevies, and enjoy the Saturday afternoon, Saturday night with a good win. I do agree with those outs that have come through. Even though they've had a change of coach, they put in a really good performance last week against the Lions, albeit at home. But that's normal when you sack a coach. The first week's always, an up and about moment. Hopefully this weekend with the travel, the outs that have come through, we can get a good win each quarter by 2 goals. That's a good, 6-7 goal win. And as I said before, like throughout our show tonight, we've got the ability now that we can really put forward our best team and regain some form heading into the off season without that being too much of a deficit from a pick point of view. Where 2.5, 3 games behind, 13 or 12, sorry, which is really handy for us. So because it means we can definitely put forward our best foot. So Saints to get up. As always, thanks to everyone at home making the comments, chatting with us, discussing Saints footy. We do enjoy and love what you say and how you interact with us. And also you three, Tom, the first time joining us tonight. Thank you. Ollie and Alana, as always, the usual OGs. Get down there Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, Marvel Stadium. It's a gross time slot, but it's important to get down there. We don't want to be the Richmond game last week where they had 18,000 at the MCG. So let's try and get above 20,000 there Saturday afternoon. Support the boys, get around them, and finish the season strong. And as always, go you mighty Saints.
Go Saints.
Saints.
Go Saints.